Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us this evening, for those of you on the East Coast, and this afternoon for those of you on the West Coast. My name is Brenda Moynihan, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Outreach located at the Kensington in White Plains, New York. And for those of you just joining us for this six-part series, the series is called A Caregiver's Guide on Cultivating Soulfulness, featuring Dr. James Rouse. And tonight is part 3 of the series, Energy for the Exhausted, How to Make, Circulate, and Radiate Good Energy. Please remember to mark your calendar on Wednesdays for the remainder of the series, parts 4, 5, and 6, at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on those Wednesdays. And before I introduce our speakers, again, for those who are just joining us, I'd like to briefly give you some information about Kensington Senior Living, or KSL for short. Kensington Senior Living is the realization of a vision of passionate leaders in the senior living industry. This industrious group sought to develop communities that took the assisted living model of care to a higher level in an environment of comfortable elegance staffed by loving professionals. KSL has 7 communities operating throughout the country, and we are proud to offer care beyond what most other traditional assisted living communities can deliver. For example, high staff to resident ratios that exceed industry standards help deepen connections between caregivers and residents. Pocket programs, which are small group activities tailored to different interests and abilities, provide opportunities for friendship and boost a sense of mastery for our residents. This 6-part series is brought to you through the collaboration of several of the Kensington Senior Living communities, including locations in White Plains, New York, Redwood City, Redondo Beach, and Sierra Madre in California, and Reston, Virginia. In all of our communities, we are committed to providing outstanding care every day with a full spectrum of clinical support, including caring for those with Alzheimer's and additional dementias. And again, for those of you just joining us this evening, at the end, we're going to put up a slide with contact information of our presenter, Dr. James Rouse, and including information to sign up for his Facebook page, his Facebook group. And if you'd like to contact any of the Kensington Senior Livings sponsoring this series. I now have the privilege and honor to welcome our speaker for this evening and give you some information about him. Dr. James Rouse, or Dr. James as he likes to be called, is a naturopathic doctor, Ironman triathlete, entrepreneur, certified yoga instructor, wellness magazine founder, speaker, author, radio talk show host, and TV personality, a real slacker. No, I'm just kidding. Dr. James earned his medical degree at the National College of Naturopathic Medicine, one of only a handful of accredited naturopathic medical schools in the country. The program integrated training in conventional medicine, including pharmacology and other Western treatment methods, with intensive study in botanical, nutritional, homeopathic medicine, and additional holistic approaches. Dr. James's diverse healthcare training and studies also include psychology, acupuncture, and traditional Chinese medicine, and of course, yoga. His focus is a wellness lifestyle, balancing mind, body, and spirit. Welcome, Dr. James.
Thanks, Brenda. How are you?
Good, so much. I can't believe all those things I read.
I love the slacker comment. That was
like
great.
that.
That was so good. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm just so grateful to be here. So I really appreciate you and the entire Kensington community. Thanks for everyone who's joining us tonight. I think tonight is going to be extra fun. Before we begin, I want you to visualize someone in your life who you go, oh my gosh, you know what? They've got good energy. Good energy. And I think when we hear that term more and more, we picture someone who's kind, someone who seems like they have a service-oriented heart. And when we're around them, we always leave a better person. That to me is always the essence of good energy. And I think for caregivers and people who are in this Kensington community and associated, either absolutely on point, taking care of loved ones, taking care of staff, taking care of different people within their community, we often are the ones, and as a primary care doctor myself, I find energy is one of those things that I'm always going, oh my gosh, when I have it, I feel like I can do anything in the world. But when I don't have it, I always feel to myself, gosh, I'm not going to show up and be the person that I know I can be. So tonight is really for you to maybe reconsider where you are in terms of your energy, but also looking at the different applications of energy. I don't want to just think in terms of you got energy to go 10, 12, 14 hours a day. But I always love the idea of also looking at things like emotional energy as well, in terms of, how much compassion we have for ourselves, how open we are, and how willing we are to be vulnerable with the things that we want to be working on, because that also takes energy. And before we begin, we had so many people send me private messages last week, and they wanted to ask about a particular word we shared, which was ikigai. So here's a book that's dedicated to the word ikigai. And as a review, remember we talked about the idea that when people are in a space of grace, and the ones who typically have a very strong mind, they tend to have great longevity, they tend to have great joy. Ikigai is an Okinawan word where we know in Okinawa, they tend to live longer and stronger. In fact, Okinawans have the greatest amount of centenarians in the entire world. So the people live to 100 there more than anything else. And all the research that's been done over the last, nearly 70 years, they said it's ikigai, which is simply a reason to get up in the morning that's bigger than us, a reason to get up in the morning that's bigger than you. So this is a great book. And maybe what we'll do sometime this summer, we can maybe do like a book club. If you guys are into it, I love reading books. And I think it'd be kind of fun if we could pick a book maybe each month and go, okay, we're gonna study ikigai. We're gonna study, another book we're gonna talk about here shortly, Man's Search for Meaning, classic book. But really tonight, let's just start with this whole idea of energy. And I'm going to use a phrase that I've used a lot with my patients in my clinic. And it's the phrase is, I'm too tired to keep running, but I'm too scared to stop. I'm too tired to keep running, but I'm too scared to stop. Who has felt that way in their lifetime? I'm sure every single one of us, particularly in this last year. Susan Evans, who's a dear friend of mine, we were talking just before we began, and we talked about how one of the things that people need in order to feel energy, but also to feel positive, to feel a sense of purpose in their life, what's the number one thing people need? We need certainty. And I can't think of any time in my lifetime or in the last year I have felt there has been no certainty. Certainty around the things that I thought at one time I could fully just say, well, this is what I'm going to do today. And knowing with the pandemic and other things that have been happening this past year, that certainty was taken away. Certainty with people in my family aging and whether or not I was going to see them again. And all the different things that we depend on to anchor us every single day is one of the biggest reasons why many of us have great energy, or we see our energy dissipate. And if anyone's ever read this book, it's a classic, of course, written by, you've probably heard of it, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And a quick, just little overview and why this book is so awesome for tonight. Viktor Frankl and his family were put into a concentration camp when he was just a young person. And he was the only person in his family who survived. And one of the things he did, he was an early student of psychology. And as he was doing his very best to have a reason each day to kind of push through easily the worst thing you could ever imagine, why did he survive? And what he looked back at his time, he said, I noticed certain people within the concentration camp, the prisoners, the ones who had figured out the 1, 2, or 3 things that they could control. They couldn't necessarily control their food. They couldn't even control whether or not they're going to survive the day. But he said one of the things he knew, that all people that seemed to have the best chances of surviving the concentration camp experience, it was how they thought. And this whole idea of this book was written on something called Logotherapy, which basically means that we have an understanding of the things that we can control, and we put our energy into those things. And what he found over his practice, he practiced for many, many years, decades thereafter, and he used to train his students and train clients and patients he worked with to say, find the 1, 2, or 3 things that you know that absolutely you have infinite control over, and then dedicate yourselves to working with those things. Just give yourself permission to focus on those things. Now, I'm sure all of us, we could say, oh my goodness, have I been on Facebook in the last year and like stuff popped up and you're like, oh my gosh, it was like an assault on my heart. My emotions just feel frazzled, and I was brought to tears, or I was brought to anger, and then maybe I was brought to happiness, depending on what you saw. Facebook is like the antithesis of Viktor Frankl's work, right? Because you have no idea what you're going to get. And really what tonight is all about, it's a dedication, or maybe it's a rededication. And I'm going to ask all of us to really just kind of take these next few minutes where we're together and go, where do I put some of my energy in places that I know I have no control over? Maybe it's a certain person. Maybe it's a certain part of your job. Maybe it's a certain part of politics, television, the news, the weather. My goodness. But where can you look at your day and say, you know what? This is an area, this has become a habit of me trying to control something that I know I can't control. Because what we know from physiology in terms of energy, but not just energy in terms of how we feel physiologically, but more importantly, maybe how we even feel emotionally, like having the resilience, the grit, the desire to stay positive, stay optimistic, to forge ahead when there's so much uncertainty. And what's really amazing about this, I want to share a quick story. So back in my early 20s, I had a chance to spend time in India, in Tibet, Nepal. I was a mountain climber. I used to also guide expeditions in the Himalayas to take people up mountains and help them to be safe. And I had an opportunity to spend time in a monastery in Dharamsala where the Dalai Lama lives. And I met a gentleman. I'm going to show up. Hopefully you can see this. This is a gentleman by the name of Goran Krop. So Goran became a dear friend of mine. And you've probably never heard of him, but I'm going to share a story that you're going to go, oh my gosh, where did he get that energy? So Goran and I met at Dharamsala at a meditation experience in a monastery. And Goran was sharing his zeal for life. And in Tibetan Buddhism, there's a phrase, and Tanya was sharing from Kensington, like, you know, first week we had this word, we had Kaizen, last week we had Ikigai, and this week we're going to have a word, Sama Vijnana. Sama Vijnana. What it basically means, I'm just going to read this because I just love this. It means, it's the Tibetan word for having the energy of the divine. And it's just giving yourself, loosely translated, it's the fullness of your entire life being broadcast with light. The fullness of your entire life being broadcast with light. So Goran was just that guy. Goran, literally, after I said goodbye to him, after meeting him in the Himalayas, he said, you know, I'm going to do something extraordinary. I am going to go back to Sweden. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack up my bike here, and I'm going to ride my bike from Sweden to Nepal, over 10,000 miles. I'm going to ride my bike. And then I'm going to take a backpack off my bike, and I'm going to climb up Mount Everest by myself with my backpack, with no oxygen. I'm going to summit Mount Everest. I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to climb back down. I'm going to hop on my bike. I'm going to ride all the way back to Sweden. He did it. So sometimes when you think about, oh my goodness, the energy I want to get out and get my walk in, the energy I want to have to, you know, put something good in my body, the little things that we think about that require energy. And then I'll never forget Goran's story about it. He said, gosh, I've been recognized as having the energy of the divine with Sama Vijnana. I am going to do something extraordinary with my energy. And that's just what he did. And I share that with you because I want to kind of set the tone for tonight. to ask all of us tonight to consider where it is that we put our energy. What are the things we put our energy that we can control? And what are the things that we put our energy that we have no control over? And what we know is that you probably remember this word from your science classes in high school or college, mitochondria. Remember mitochondria? You can think of mitochondria as like the little energy factories, the little powerhouses, and they're in every single cell. And every single cell has a mitochondria. So we have quadrillions of these little factories of energy. But over time, as we age, those little cells, those little powerhouses, little factories of energy, they start to lose their material to build energy. And when we hit my age, 50s, close to 60, and start moving into the 60s, 70s, and 80s, a lot of our mitochondria just run out of material. And when they do, our energy goes in decline. But even if we're in our 30s and our 40s, just having stress, not putting good food in our bodies, not exercising, all those things affect our mitochondria. And one thing about mitochondria, so we don't get away with just kind of going, I'm just going to hopefully have maybe half of my quadrillion working for me. They kind of communicate and they sort of say, well, you know what, James, you're not doing your part. As Brenda said, you're a slacker. You're a slacker, James. So they start ramping down their energy. And over time, they learn what I like to say, metabolic mediocrity, which simply means that they stop producing energy. And then when that happens, we age fast, we lose muscle, our brains start to fade in terms of acuity. We have our predisposition to all kinds of diseases, from Alzheimer's to heart disease to cancer. We just start aging fast. We accelerate our aging. So I'm going to share with you 6 things. Now, I love to give a list, and I'm a list maker. You guys want to see what a list make? This is me just today. This is me over the weekend. I make lists because I love the idea of self-efficacy. I love writing things down and crossing them off. And these 6 things, I want you all to think about your mitochondria. I want you to think, oh my gosh, I got a quadrillion of these. But you could say, I'm 40, or I'm 37, or I'm 58, almost me. And you're thinking, I don't feel the energy I'd like to feel. And I spend a lot of time and energy focusing on things I can't control. And part of this whole series of why we're doing this, these 6 weeks are about reclaiming our self-love, prioritizing our self-care, and doing it at a level of compassion that's like maybe no other time in your whole life. And equally important, being vulnerable to say to yourself, you know what? I really have a hard time prioritizing my self-care. I need to really set a precedent for how I'm going to start moving forward in my life. One of the things I always remind myself every morning with my meditation, I say simply, spirit is not held by precedent. That basically means that anything that's happened in my life before this moment doesn't matter, because it's not held by precedent. It's held by what it is that I want to move forward in the future. So these 6 things are clinically proven, scientifically validated to feed these mitochondria. And as a side effect, they'll fight unhealthy aging. They're going to help you feel better than ever. They're going to help you prevent diseases. And all the while, your emotional and physical resilience and energetic world is going to increase dramatically. You're going to love this. So number 1, this is great because I'm going to get the hardest ones out of the way first. Remember last week we were talking about nuts and seeds and all that stuff? Well, we didn't talk enough about vegetables. And here's what's interesting. The average mitochondria to really, really perform awesomely wants to have at least 6 cups of vegetables every single day. Now, before you go, oh my gosh, I got to get going with 1 cup. The beautiful thing is 1 cup begins the process of moving that direction. So for me, a salad, you can usually get 2 to 3 cups right there alone, but kind of just break it down and say, okay, in the morning, I can have a smoothie. I can throw in, whatever I want to do there with some greens there. I can have a salad. I can have a stir fry. And really what I'd like to say is shoot for at least 1 to 2 servings every single day for a week. and then you've kind of got yourself moving in motion. But what's in the greens is these particular group of antioxidants that literally, if your mitochondria go shopping in the grocery store, it would go right to the produce section and go, I'm loading up right here. In particular, things like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, the crucifers are really, really important. And always bring in that avocado, bring in the olive oil alongside of it, and your body's going to absorb something called sulforaphane, great Scrabble word. But when you get more of that particular antioxidant, your mitochondria just flourishes. So you're just thinking, I'm not going to get 6 servings, but I can get 1. Go with broccoli or go with spinach and add that healthy fat, the olive oil or the avocado alongside of it, and you totally are on your way. One thing. Now, I think you're going to yourself right now, okay, that's reasonable. Number 2, maybe this is great. So number 2 is omega-3 fat. So that can be in walnuts, that could be in fish, that could be in all kinds of just simple, wonderful things that you already love to do. Flax seeds. Look at all these ways you can supplement with omega-3s. So that's an easy one. And it's delicious too. These are the healthy fats everyone loves. Number 3, fiber. Now, last week we talked about the necessity of fiber. So this is ideal. Now for women, I want y'all to kind of say, if I can get somewhere between 20, ideally 25 to 30 grams a day, then I have totally covered one of my mitochondria's most primary sources of energy. And what I think we should do, and I would love it if you guys would comment on the Facebook page, Soulful Living, because that's where we can share information. Go, James, give me a day in the life of fiber, and I'll map out the things that we can do to get that 20 to 30 grams of fiber every single day. Maybe throw in a couple of cool ways to get omega-3s. And then, yes, how do we dress up those crucifers to make sure we get those vegetables in so our mitochondria can flourish? Now, this is interesting as well. Sugar. Sugar is kryptonite. It is literally kryptonite for mitochondria. And we know that people who in this country, the average American has 60 grams of sugar in their diet every single day. 60 grams. And guess what? This is where I think we really want to kind of lean in. I think about mental health every single day. I think about it for my mom, who's for the first time in 60 years, she's alone. She lost her dad back in October. So she's been really struggling with her mental health, her loneliness. And my mom's been reaching for a lot of sugar, more sugar. She goes, I've eaten more sugar in the last few months than I think I have since I was a teenager. Because we know when we're depressed or we're stressed or we're tired, we reach for sugar. It gives us a quick hit of false energy, but it also boosts our serotonin for a micro moment. And then it crashes. Then we feel more depression. We feel more anxiety. Our mental health suffers. So sugar literally is like leaning into a punch for your mitochondria. So do everything you can to see if you can ratchet down your sugar consumption. And when you're kind of feeling cravings for sugar, ask yourself a simple question like, is it really sugar that I'm craving, or am I craving human connection? Is it sugar that I'm craving, or would I really just get the same fix from taking a walk right now? Is it sugar that I'm craving, or would I just need to have a good cry, a good laugh, a good dance, some good music, something that can naturally raise my serotonin sustainably to help me feel more whole, more peaceful, more positive? So that's the story on sugar. Number 4, remember last week we talked about the 20-minute walk, 10 minutes out, 10 minutes back, changing speeds for extra credit, even more extra credit if a neighbor sees us and we wave to him and say, hey, I got it going on. This is what I know how to do. The interval walking is a game changer for my brain, for my heart. Also, it's for your mitochondria. Studies show there's nothing more effective for exercise than high intensity interval walking. So doing that walk that we talked about, it's kind of like building on last week's story and bringing it into now energy, sustainability, optimism. And what's beautiful about that, studies show that if we can get that done within the first hour, ideally, of waking every morning, the mitochondria can use more of that energy because it actually pushes the cortisol, the stress hormones, out of the way, and you can run 12 to 14 hours on that 20-minute investment. Think about that. your return on your intention, your ROI. I'm going to go 10 minutes out, 10 minutes back. My goal is simple: to intentionally give myself the opportunity to love myself into motion. And when I turn around, I come back and I have 12 to 14 hours of sustained, awesome metabolism. And lastly, the easiest one of all, you are going to love this: napping. Taking a nap. Studies show that a 12 to 20-minute nap every single day is one of the most powerful ways that we can recharge our mitochondria. So I think everyone, and we've got a whole bunch of people on tonight, everybody, this is the nap that you've always wanted. And now your mitochondria is going, when I get up after 10 minutes or 12 minutes or 20 minutes, my mitochondria is completely recharged and ready to take on the day. Studies show between 2 and 3 in the afternoon is the ideal mitochondrial window. And believe it or not, taking off your shoes for the nap actually augments the depth and the benefit of the napping. So we got to take off our shoes. We got to get fully into it. And when we do it, your mitochondria gets completely replenished. So that's awesome. We got our greens, our omega-3s, our fiber, our high intensity walking. We're going to drop the sugar, not just for energy, but for also our mental and emotional well-being. And then we're going to take a nap. So I think we can do at least one of these, please. And then when you consider my friend Goran, and I'm not comparing any of us to Goran. This is a superhuman effort. But what I love about Goran's story is that it reminds me of another beautiful human being. And I want to share this gentleman with you. Can you guys see this? That's me, right? The smiler, with my dear friend Norman. A couple years ago, I was up in Bozeman, Montana, and we were taking a hike, and it was on a particular hike it was a pretty steep climb. And I get up there and, full of zeal. I love exercise. I was making my way back down, and I looked down way down the hill, and I saw this gentleman. I'm going, gosh, he's moving so slow. I wonder if he's okay. And as I got closer to him, I was going, wow, he is really moving slow. And then I got up really close and get a chance to look him in the eyes. And I said, good morning. What's your name? And he said, good morning, my name is Norman. And the doctor in me, the young person in me, the whippersnapper in me goes, gosh, are you okay? Like concerned. And he goes, I'm perfect. How are you? And I said, I'm doing well. Thank you. And I said, is this your first time? And this is when Norman put me in my place. Norman is 94 now, but he was 92 years old. 92. Every single morning since the age of 30, Norman had made this hike. Thousands of times he'd climbed this mountain every single morning. He did it after he had lost his son unexpectedly. His child had passed away. And Norman said, I don't even know if I want to go on. And he told his wife, I don't even know if I want to go on. And his wife said, why don't you just go for a walk and talk to Bobby? That was her son's name. Go and just talk to Bobby. So he began talking to Bobby on this mountain 50, 60 years later, every single day. He had a reason to get up in the morning that was bigger than him. 62 years and counting, and I was up in Bozeman last fall. Sure enough, Norman was out on the walk. And I think it leads me to us maybe today, tonight, taking a moment and checking in. Checking in and asking ourselves a simple question. When I think about me being a dad, I think about me being a friend, I think about me and what I want my life to be. I want it to be possibility. In fact, I was thinking about our soulful diet after these last few weeks together, and I want y'all to consider a diet that we're going to start following. Possibilitarian is the diet I want to ask you to consider following. I want you to think about what Goran did, and it sounds impossible. Guess what? He made it possible. Norman decided not to end his life, but instead spend 62 years every single morning climbing a very difficult mountain, now into his 90s, to connect with his little boy and make sure his little boy knows how much he still loves him. To me, that's possibilitarianism. The word diet comes from the Greek word dieta, which means way of life. Americans are notoriously gifted when it comes to following diets. We do keto, we do paleo, we do vegan, we do whatever. Diet doesn't mean what you're eating. It means, how are you living? How are you living? So tonight, before you go to bed, maybe you write down one or two things and say, you know what? Like Viktor Frankl, who survived Auschwitz, he got very clear about what he could control, and he lived on that. That was his possibility. And Viktor lived decades after he was able to go beyond his experience at Auschwitz, to continue living and giving back to literally millions of people through his writing and his research, focusing on what we can control. So here's my call. What can you control? How you think, maybe what it is that you put in your body, maybe who you spend time with, but certainly you can control how much love you give yourself. I have a little practice. Let me see if I can, I'm going to bring us over here. You guys can look over here at my wall. Up here is a monastery that I lived in India. And I learned to practice there. I was always kind of a fidgety person, kind of a kid who had a lot of energy. Imagine that. I'm 57. This is me. Imagine me when I was 8. And I always just didn't want to lose my way. I always wanted to keep my mind and my heart open so I wouldn't lose my way. And this morning I woke up, I said, what can I tell the community tonight so they don't forget how good they are? And I'm looking at you tonight to remind you how good you already are. And remember that maybe the one thing that still needs to have certainty in your life is you certainly are going to love yourself no matter what. You're certainly going to be soft and compassionate and open with yourself no matter what. Days get moving, time gets moving. We forget how good we are. We start trying to control things we can't control. So tonight, here's a practice I want you to think about and then maybe begin tomorrow. When I was living in that monastery, I thought to myself, you know what? All I really want to know how to do is how to love myself better, love myself more. I had grown up in a family of alcoholics. I had grown up in a family of addiction, physical and emotional abuse. My self-esteem was really low. I'm dyslexic, so academically I struggled. I needed to know how to love myself better. I bet you do too. I don't think there's anyone that says, you know what, I'm perfect there. There's no more room. I'm maxed out on love for myself. So the practice was every single doorway that I passed through, I was going to simply utter under my breath, what would love do now? What would love do now? And what I've learned over the last, nearly 40 years of doing this, I travel probably between 200 and 300 thresholds every single day, from my bedroom to my bathroom back to the bedroom, or to the kitchen. If you counted them, you're going to see, oh my gosh, hundreds of doorways every single day. I'm going to ask you to consider, start with one doorway. First thing in the morning, you wake up, You make your way to the first room that you're going to pass, the threshold you cross over, and your prayer, your mantra, your meditation, your affirmation. What would love do now? Over and over again. And just see over time how you carry yourself. What kind of possibilities open up for yourself. The choices that you start to make on your behalf of what love does. Because when you ask that question, before you walk in and you lay eyes on your children, you're going to wake them up in the bedroom. You're going to go and see your spouse, your partner, your lover, someone you care about. You walk across a threshold. What would love do now? Love is. It walks in the room under the influence of love. If there's anything I've learned from studying Viktor Frankl, from being in 4 years of med school, 3 years of residency, working with all kinds of different people and getting to know you in this beautiful Kensington community, every single one of us is still learning how to love ourselves better. I may disguise it in 6 servings of vegetables. I may disguise it in dropping sugar, but I'm not going to disguise it tonight by just saying, open to the idea that there could be just a little bit more room for you to insert yourself in a space of grace. Insert yourself into a space of grace. Don't treat the list like, I'm going to be good if I do everything right. Treat the list as a to-you list, not a to-do list. An opportunity to connect with your heart's knowing. And then just see what your heart wants. See what your soul is asking for. And then go about answering what love does. And just watch how magically your self-care, your self-love becomes a whole lot more comfortable. Because it's already in you. You already are that good. It's just giving yourself permission to allow it to come through you. I went over tonight, Brenda. I'm so sorry. My goodness. But, I wanted to make sure, Brenda, before we begin with the Q&A, I think the risk always is in experiences like this, we have a laundry list of all the things that we think we need to change in our life. And what I've learned, and I've worked with over 10,000 patients in different capacity, oncology, kids and pediatrics. The one thing I've always seen work, love. Love is medicine. And when we give it to ourselves first, our ability to make really beautiful choices that reflect what's in our heart goes up exponentially. The chances for our success are dramatically improved. So thanks everybody for letting me go on a little longer. Sorry about that, Brenda.
No, all good stuff. I have to add to the list, mountain climber, to the stalker list.
Yeah, I am a mountain climber. I've been up over 20,000 feet. Gosh, over 10 times in my life. It's not, you know what? I'll post some pictures tomorrow on our Facebook page about some of the places I've climbed in Tibet and so forth. It'll be fun. But Brenda, this is such a beautiful community, and I want people to realize that, people like Goran and what he did is just super cool, but Norman's even cooler.
Oh, yes. That was a great story. Wonderful. So let me open it up, folks. On your screen, either on the top or the bottom of your Zoom screen, you see the Q&A box and the chat box. So please type in your questions or if you have any comments. So we have our first comment. This is such an enjoyable experience. Thank you for being so awesome and helpful.
Oh, thank you. Who said that?
That was from Dot Tagarelli.
Oh, hey, Dot. Thank you. I love you, sister. Thanks for making that very generous comment. This is really, it's my honor. Please know that.
I have a question, and the question is, I like to eat fruit, but fruit contains sugar. Is that still good for me?
Great question. So yeah, believe me, I'm not the fruit police. So let's make sure we know. And yes, there's something called glycemic index. Fancy way of saying some fruit has a lot more sugar and raises your insulin, your blood sugar really fast. Other fruit, not so much. So if you can go with berries, blueberries, blackberries, they have great fiber content, lower glycemic index. And when you pair them with the omega-3s, one of the best things you can ever do is put your blueberries or blackberries with your walnuts with some pumpkin seeds, a little extra zinc. Oh my goodness. Have that in the morning as kind of your go-to granola that is so wonderfully rich in all kinds of antioxidants. And your fruit is a blessing because those polyphenols are awesome protecting our brain, helping our mind stay strong, and really, really good for metabolism because they have so many rich micronutrients that facilitate energy in the mitochondria. Our other Scrabble word, I know Tanya's going to go, mitochondria, the next new word for
We have another comment from Teresa. She says, just want to thank Dr. James for your enigmatic smile and energy. I look forward to that yoga class someday in the future.
Oh my goodness. You know what? We are going to do that. And so maybe if, Teresa, you get on tomorrow morning on our website, on our little Facebook page, let's think about when we can do that, everybody. And we can even do an evening meditation together. I teach meditation. We can do like a little 10-minute practice before bed so everyone sleeps awesomely. And we can maybe even tape it so you can use it later. That's so listen, I want you all to know I work for you. And I mean that with all my heart. You need to tell me what y'all want to learn. What's the cool stuff that you learn and know about? And I will do my very best. If I don't know the answer, I will do my best to find the answer and we'll present it next week.
I love the mini meditation. I love that.
Would that be fantastic?
I think it'd be great. A couple more comments from Mary Fran. Can we really do the book club? I'd enjoy that. We are learning so much from you. So positive. She's right.
Oh, Mary, you got it. So I'll throw in a couple of my favorite books that we can start looking at over this next week. I'll put them on Facebook tomorrow. But I tell you, one of the easiest reads before bed is the Ikigai book. Oh my gosh. It just helps us to kind of go, I don't look at my self-care, my wellness as this chore, as this regimen. This is just beautiful living. And it really just talks about how the Okinawans have really made peace with aging. And it's probably why they live to 100 more than anybody else.
Right, right. A couple more comments from Diana. She says, this is the one night of the week that I sit down after work with a hot cup of tea and indulge in self-care. Thanks to you, Dr. James, I will work on making this a habit.
Oh, Diana, you know what? Good for you to actually just say, number one, I give myself permission. I think that's the hardest thing for caregivers is that when we prioritize and say, you know, I put my feet up, I have some tea, and this is just me time, to really surrender, to put our guard down. We're so used to being hyper vigilant, having our guard up, looking out for the world, taking care of the world, that if we can just surrender and, oh, you're going to love this, Mary and Brenda. So we talked about telomeres last week. Remember you guys about the things that protect our DNA? Very, very cool study that was just about women. Women who were open to the idea before, after they finished work, before they went inside and kind of took care of, you know, their other life, they took 7 minutes, spent it outdoors. 7 minutes outdoors. Their telomerase, which is the enzyme that makes the telomeres strong, literally was exponentially higher than people who just got out of work, went home, and just kept going. A little break in nature, a little break with tea, a little break of just self-indulgent love makes your DNA do the happy dance. So thanks for reminding me of that really cool little study.
So we have time for one more question or comment. And Kathy says, I believe there's no such thing as a coincidence. I came across printout reminding me of this seminar. Although late, very happy I tuned in, needed to hear what would love do now. Thank you, peace and blessings.
Kathy.
Very nice.
God bumps right there. No accidents. Brenda organizing this with Tanya, with Susan, with Victoria, with Jack. This team is divine orchestration, in my humble opinion. This is the universe working for all of us. So Kathy, you're right. No accidents. You're here because what does love do? Love tunes in and reminds ourselves how good we already are, surrenders and says, I'm going to let someone love on me for a little time.
Definitely. And you know, folks, what I'd like to say I see all the comments. They're all positive. You all enjoy this seminar. For those of you just joining in, please tell your friends and family. You can go to the Kensington website at www.thekensingtonwhiteplains.com and have them register. There are still 3 sessions left, so please do so. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight. All of my Kensington colleagues, especially Susan Evans, for helping to bring the seminar to all of you. Please stay to the end. Again, for those of you just joining us for the first session tonight, you'll see the slide that has information on how to contact Dr. James, his Facebook group, and information on how to contact any of the Kensington senior living communities that help sponsor tonight's session. Remember, part 4 of the series will be shown on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and thank you, Dr. James. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda. Much love, everyone. Peace and blessings. Have a beautiful night.